If you enjoy watching Common Ground online, please consider making a tax-deductible contribution at lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on Common Ground. I'm Rachel Johnson. On Common Ground, we not only explore the region's arts community, but we also dig up the dirt on the culture and history embedded throughout northern Minnesota. In this week's episode, Dave and Kathy Towley dig a family barbecue pit in preparation for their 40th wedding anniversary. The couple is passing down this family tradition to a 5th generation of youngsters. Then we'll cool off a bit and practice winter survival skills with Bemidji State University's Sustainability Office. The students demonstrate the construction of a traditional snow shelter, also known as a Quinzhee.
Hi, I'm Dave Towley, and this is my wife Kathy. People here in Bemidji know us as woodturners, as artists. But today we want to introduce you to another side of us, and that's some heritage that we've got on Kathy's side of the family that we're going to share with you, and that's the pit barbecue.
It's been a tradition in my family that goes back 5 generations. My grandfather, which would be my dad's father, it started when my father was younger. They would put in these pit barbecues where they lived or had their summer home in Deer Lake, Wisconsin. And it was an annual event. Family would get together. It'd be big celebrations. It's just a fun thing to do. And so basically my grandfather did it. And through research, trying to find out where he got the idea, it sounds like either he brought it back from Mexico because they would travel to Mexico, or he had a brother that during the war was in Hawaii, and this is kind of a Polynesian sort of thing, the barbecue, roasting the meat in the ground. So it could have come from there. So it was my grandfather. Then of course my father carried on the tradition, and then as I was born and us girls, I have 4 sisters, basically we'd always have a pit barbecue. And it was normally around the 4th of July, and we would even we'd have it up here at the cabin, and friends, family, all sorts of people would come. And then as Dave and I met, as we got married, they had a few more pit barbecues. Dave became involved. Then our children became involved, and now our grandchildren are involved, and we want them to know and to carry on the tradition. So we have 5 generations. We know that this goes back and probably further.
Well, as Kathy indicated, this tradition predates me in coming into the family by a long shot. But the first time that I helped would have been up here at Plantagenet, would have been the July celebration, 4th of July, and that would have been in 1970. And in those 42 years I've participated. We did a count here, and this would be our 11th barbecue that I've been a part of, and that averages out about every 4 years. Now the last barbecue that we did before this one was in October of last year for our youngest son's wedding and their reception. So granted, that's not 4 years, but then prior to that, it was about 6 years ago that we had one up here when we first moved up to the Plantagenet. Kind of a celebration, homecoming, housewarming thing. So about every 4 years on average, I've been part of one of these pit barbecues, and it's where it may have been just an obligation to do when you first start out, you know, the future in-laws, and you got the girlfriend, and you want to make a good impression. That might have been the motivation to begin with, but now it is, as Kathy indicated, it's a family tradition. It's become one of my traditions. On my side of the family, we have the lutefisk dinner, of course, at Christmas Eve, and it's important to pass that on as well. And this pit barbecue is something that our boys and their children is part of their heritage, and it's important that they understand a little bit about the background, the best we know, and then also how to do it, and so that they can carry it on after we're gone. As we mature and get older, I think heritage becomes more meaningful to us. And we're starting to see that in our own boys now that they're reaching an age where they want to pass on to legacy to their children. And that was one of the drivers for this pit barbecue as part of our 40th anniversary celebration.
The first thing you do is you pick the date, and it seems to be around the 4th of July. Whatever weekend in there seems to be a pretty good weekend. Then you hope for rain, because if you don't have the rain, you can't have the big fire. So you got to kind of have plan B in effect of, okay, if there's a burning ban, then what do we do? And that's when the charcoaler comes into play. So the weather has a lot to do with it. So you pick the date, you let everybody know, hey, this is what we're doing. You want to be part of it? Come on and do it. The next is basically preparing where you're going to put the pit. And Dave can talk about the size and the selection of why we picked where we did pick it this year.
Well, I'd also interject that you might want to do a wood inventory, because it does take a fair amount of brush and or wood that can be split down into the right size. But again, Kathy was right. You decide where you want to put the pit, and depending on what you're going to put in it, obviously determines the size of the pit. What we generally, a rule of thumb is that you would want the pit to be about 44 to 48 inches deep. You want it to be wide enough and long enough that there's at least 12 to 16 to 18 inches of coals around each of the meat packages. What that does is provides you enough heat reserve, the coals themselves, that it will carry the cooking process through the 12 hours that the meat will be underground. That's a tremendous amount of wood. Now, to give you an idea of the size of the pit that we dug for this one, it was about 40 inches wide, and it was about 44 inches deep, and it was very close to 9 feet long, if I recall. And that was because we had 2 turkeys, we had a 150-pound pig, and then we had a pot of beans that had to go into this hole. We started the fire about 4:30 in the afternoon, and we fired continuously until about 11:45 or 11:45 to midnight. And we went through a considerable amount of wood. It's important when you're looking at your wood that the brush would be 2 to 3 inches typically in diameter hardwood. We don't use conifer because of the opportunity for the resin. You get kind of a turpentine taste. So we use hardwoods. We typically don't use birch bark for the same reason. It gives you that taste. You certainly can use split birch or any other hardwood. And then when you want to split it down to where it's about 2 inches in thickness, the idea is that you don't want it to, you want coals, you don't want logs that are unburned in the pit, because they obviously are a heat sink. And then we'll throw rocks into the fire as it gets to the top of the pit, so that they can preheat and become red hot.
Once you put the rocks in, this is just a caution. Rocks tend to, if there's moisture in them, will explode.
Yeah.
So you got to be real careful that when those rocks are heating up, that they aren't exploding and somebody's getting hit with a rock. So you got to be careful there. Try to pick rocks that are real solid and don't have those cracks in them. So that's just a little suggestion.
The rocks are typically anywhere from 20 to 40 pounds, and what we'll do is we will nest those against the meat packages just at the end, when we put the meat in the coals themselves, before we cover it up, and that helps carry the heat through the cooking process.
The meat preparation, depending on how many people you're going to have. You're going to have leftovers, but you want leftovers. I like the leftovers. This year we went with a whole hog. It was actually just a smaller hog. It was about 150 pounds. And we went with 2 turkeys. The turkeys were around 25 pounds each. And 1 big container of beans. And when I'm talking big container, it's a big cast iron actual bean pot that was used probably way back for baked beans. It's a bean pot. And I use actually the family recipe that goes way back that's been passed on down. It's the bean whole beans. You want quite a bit of fat on the pig because that gives it the moisture. And I will take some actually garlic cloves and stuff it with a few garlic cloves, not too many, because once again, not everybody likes a lot of garlic, but it gives it that little bit of seasoning. And then I'll rub it with some seasoning, not too much. You can always add salt afterwards. The first step that you do once you've prepped the meat and it's ready, the turkeys are small enough, and I have some big cake pans where it goes into a cake pan. The first step is to wrap it with aluminum foil. And you're going to wrap it layer upon layer upon layer so no air is going to escape. The next step is you're going to wrap it with newspaper.
Just the newsprint stuff.
And you're talking a good inch of newspaper all the way around. Then you take either a gunny sack. If you don't get a gunny sack, you can get burlap, or you can use a cotton sheet or a cotton blanket, but you want to make sure it's cotton. Wrap it really well, and then you take wire and you wrap it, and you're going to leave a loop on the top. Once all that's done, then you soak it in water. And we have a big tub that basically you take this whole meat and you soak it in this water, and you're going to soak it till it's all wet, because basically what that's going to do is steam it. And that's what you do with the turkeys. The pig, being we don't have a pan that big, we wrapped it with many layers of aluminum foil. And just a secret, because I got the wrong kind this year. I got the light duty. Don't get the light duty. Get the heavy duty. And wrap it really good to make sure all that steam is going to stay inside that meat. Then you take the newspaper again, and once again it's going to be many newspapers, and wrap it good inch thick. Then wrap your burlap or gunny sack or sheet and wire, and you're going to soak that.
Hogs is too heavy to handle comfortably with your hands, so we wrap it with a chain. And the idea of the chain again is to facilitate handling the meat over the coals in and out. And then we carry it over to the pit. We excavate cavities in the coals, again mindful of the fact we don't want any of the meat to touch either other packages of meat or the walls of the pit. They would act as heat sinks, obviously wouldn't cook. So we want to carefully and strategically place the meat by excavating cavities in the coals. We set the meat in level so that the juices don't run out, and then we place those heated rocks up next to the meat packages, and then we'll cover each package of meat with several inches of coals, the best we can, 4 or 5 inches, 6 inches of coals. And then the entire thing is covered with about 18 inches of dirt. And we know we've got enough dirt on the pit when there's no longer any smoke or steam coming up through the dirt. And we walk away and we come back about 12 hours later, roughly. Having talked to Kathy's cousins, that's pretty much how they do it still too. So we've maintained the tradition, I think.
And then the tradition too is family comes, gets together, you have your salads, you have your desserts, and just everybody being together, telling stories, going back in history or different things that they remember. One thing that I have now kind of stopped and asked myself, what are our grandchildren going to remember of us? And hopefully this will be one of them, and this will be a good memory. And creating those memories, because without memories, there's just not much in life. Or you want to create those memories, and hopefully they're good memories. But memories are so important, because once you're gone, you hope that those memories are there. Well, Dave and I were married 40 years this 8th of July. And I always wanted to just renew our vows. And so we decided to renew our vows and wanted to do it in front of family and friends and wanted to do it here. Basically, it was very impromptu. It was just something where we just renewed our vows to each other and just kind of said, hey, thank you, you know, we're here, we're going to stick together through thick and thin. And it was just basically getting everybody together. We had people here that our boy's scoutmaster and his wife came, and we hadn't seen them for a while. And it brought friends together that we hadn't seen for a while, and some we had seen, new friends, and it just everybody, and hopefully everybody had a good time. I know I did. It brought family together.
"40 years just goes by in an eye blink." And somebody asked me when they heard we were married 40 years, how do you do that, they said. And I said, well, it's if you're with the right person, and not every day is a perfect day. That'd be foolish, and I'd be a liar if I said so. But you find the right person, and you do the very best you can to make that person's day special. And that person's doing the same thing for you. And the next thing you know, it's 40 years, and a lot of great memories and a lot of great times and trials and tribulations, to be sure. There's no doubt about that. But we're very, very blessed in our lives, and me particularly so.
Uh-oh, this is it. This is it.
What?
You know what's underneath?
I guess having done 11 of these barbecues and being the de facto patriarch of the family, I have a tendency to want to take the lead. And that's all well and good if the tradition were to end with me. But as I realized as we were opening the meat that there I was giving direction, and I decided I had to step back and step away. We're going to get as much dirt off right now as we can. It's wet yet. We could have left turkeys in yet. That's all right. And so I actually did walk away and let my sons and daughters-in-law and their children open the meat and prepare the meat and that kind of thing. And it is, in a way, it's a handoff of the tradition.
Pretty soon it'll be your turn, huh?
And it's not that I'm disinterested or that I don't want to be in there, but at the same time, it's one thing to be told how to do it and watch someone else do it. It's another thing to do it yourself. And if this tradition is indeed to live on, I think it's important for the others to be able to step up and to do it.
I think it's actually pretty fun to make. Pretty fun to get it ready. And after it's done, it usually is really good.
Do you see yourself doing this in the future?
Yeah.
What we did is,
and then my son, too. I'm going to teach him how to do it, too.
And maybe it's time for Kathy and I to step back and advise more so than be directly involved. And that kind of came to me as we were pulling the meat out of the pit and we were opening it up. I realized, wait a minute, I'm giving all the directions, and maybe that's not the right thing. So I kind of walked away there. And next year we do it again on the 4th. We'll ask the boys and the grandkids to tell us what they want to do, you know, and how to do it.
My name is Brett Cease, and I work in the Sustainability Office this year as a Minnesota Green Corps member. And one fun project that we've been able to do has been teaming up with the Traditional Skills Workshop Series, which the Sustainability Office hosts around once a month throughout the whole school year. And we taught a class on how to build Quinzhees, kind of the art of Quinzhee building. Quinzhees are a traditional snow shelter that have originated in the northern Canada region and Alaska. It was originally inhabited and a technology that was created by the Athapascan people. So several thousand years ago, people had to survive very harsh winters without a lot of tools to be able to kind of build shelters. And so at its most basic level, a Quinzhee is essentially a big snow dome. It's like a round house or a round kind of dome shape, very similar to an igloo in appearance, except rather than blocked ice being used as the main construction material. It's just compacted snow. So to build a Quinzhee, essentially all the materials you're going to need are a lot of snow, the more the merrier, some kind of shoveling device, and then a lot of sticks or some kind of thin rod. And what you do with that then basically is you slowly circle around this one space. You try to find an area on the ground that's really flat, that looks like it's not going to have a lot of uneven terrain when you dig it out, obviously, because you're going to be sleeping there. You want it to be nice and even. And then you slowly make bigger and bigger concentric circles, shoveling the snow on the ground into a central pile. And you're just slowly mounding that up. And maybe every 1 or 2 passes, what you do is you take a break from shoveling, and it feels really good at that point because you're really sick of the same motion. And instead, you just work around the circle and you actually compact it. You're really kind of trying to tighten that space so that the snow is together. And so that process, depending on how motivated you are, depending on how thick the snowfall is, can take anywhere from an hour to several hours, again, also depending on how big you want your Quinzhee. If you want a one-person Quinzhee, well, maybe that's only half an hour. If you want a Quinzhee big enough for a party, then you might be there the whole afternoon. After you've got the Quinzhee the size of the mound that you want, you also want to make sure that you get all your sticks out. And again, you can just find them, in the brush pile in the middle of the woods, however you want to get them. And you measure out about a foot for each of them. Now, you don't have to be very precise, but around that length, and then you're going to insert them at that angle of kind of entry point into the dome, and you want to make about 2 to 3 rings around the dome. And the sticks, you don't do it to make it look like a porcupine or odd. You're doing it on top of that to really make sure that when you're shoveling it out after it's settled, that you're not kind of digging too far and weakening the structure in a certain area. Because it might seem pretty easy from the outside to figure out the dimensions from the inside, but it's a whole different world once you get in there. And especially with the darkness and not being able to see very well, those sticks are very helpful guides to know, okay, well, I hit the stick, that means I'm going to kind of leave this area off anymore. It kind of helps you cordon off different areas until you've excavated the right dome shape. So you put all those sticks in, and then you let it settle. And then after it's settled, you come back out and you take a shovel, and at this point, a big shovel has been really helpful to get all that snow thrown on. It's nice to have like a small pot even. We had Frisbees. You can have little mini shovels. And however you want, it's kind of confined space. You define kind of where you want your door, and the door's dimensions are actually a pretty important part of the Quinzhee. Obviously, the bigger the door, the more heat can enter and leave the Quinzhee. So you kind of want to keep it small, but you don't want it so small that your back scrapes against it, or for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable exiting and leaving the Quinzhee. So you have your door, and then you slowly start. It's this long excavation, and you're working together, and you're really kind of maybe giving each other breaks, and people are slowly kind of unfolding this inner chamber, and that again kind of taps into that childhood experience of, wow, here is this whole cave that didn't exist, before we created it ourselves. And at that point then, that's all that you really have left to do. The Quinzhee can be anywhere, like I said, between 3 feet to 5 feet tall inside, maybe even bigger if you have a lot of energy. So it's really important as well to be aware that, like any kind of a structure, the Quinzhee has safety risks. I guess one thing that I'd want to pass on is it's traditional that people don't build Quinzhees alone. You're obviously working with kind of an unpredictable substance in that snow. When I have kind of heard of Quinzhees collapsing, they give a little bit of a warning with kind of caving in a little bit and then a little bit more and then settling. But it's really important that you have somebody available in a position to dig you out should the snow collapse on you. And at this point, also just be aware that when you're shoveling, the most advantageous position to do that in, if it does collapse, is obviously on your knees rather than kind of lying prone facing down. And the good news for viewers, not to intimidate them, is once the Quinzhee has been shoveled out, it's almost guaranteed not to collapse. It's in that active process of putting stress on the walls and digging and pounding that it might shift. So people shouldn't feel afraid once they're in there, you know, I know myself at least, I still feel a slight tinge of paranoia tucking into my sleeping bag at night and lying there looking up at the Quinzhee in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the woods. But the viewers should know that Quinzhees are very safe, and that it's just that process of deconstructing the inside that they should be careful. I think the Quinzhee building workshop really appeals to everyone. I think it was really an intriguing idea for anyone that walked by and saw the posters or the sign-up sheet. And I think it's because it really taps into all of our kind of kid pasts. You know, I think in northern Minnesota or kind of the whole Northwoods, a lot of us have that experience growing up, you know, on a snow day after a big dump and we didn't have school, going outside and just having fun in the sun or maybe in the continuing ongoing blizzard and really tunneling out. You know, I have memories of creating these labyrinths in our backyard, you know, in big drifts, or even out in North Dakota, you know, there'd be huge drift piles in the middle of winter. And I think that experience, you know, of really kind of creating a shelter, a really homey feeling atmosphere out of a very harsh landscape is something that almost everyone can tap into from their childhood.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Common Ground. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
If you have a segment idea for Common Ground pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org or call us at 218-333-3022. To view this episode or any Common Ground segment, visit us at lptv.org. To order individual segments or entire episodes of Common Ground, please call 218-333-3020. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008. If you enjoyed this episode of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.